How livable is Oakville, and where are the best neighborhoods in Oakville to raise a family? Well, in today's video, we're going to be diving in deep into the Area Vibes website and taking a look at how they rank how livable Oakville is. Now, if you don't know, they have their own index that's based on a variety of factors, from the amenities to the commute to the cost of living, the crime, the employment, the healthcare, the housing, the schools, and neighborhood rating, and puts it in an index out of 100. And I can tell you there's a lot of things I agree with on this website. However, there's also a lot of things I disagree with. So if you want to learn everything, in my opinion, that is wrong, but also right about the Area Vibes website, keep on watching. Now, if you're new here and want to learn everything about what it's like living in Oakville and the surrounding cities like Burlington, Milton, or Hamilton, make sure to hit the subscribe button. My name is Matthew, the founding realtor of the Living in Hamilton channel and team, and for the past couple of years, we've been helping people just like yourselves relocate here and buy a home in Oakville, Burlington, and Hamilton. So if you're thinking about making the move, whether you're in 60 days or 6 months out, send me and my team a message today. Otherwise, let's just jump on the computer and get started. So as you can see, the overall livability score for Oakville was an 84 out of 100 according to the Area Vibes website, with a D plus in amenities, which is one of the things we're going to start with. I completely disagree with, and we'll dive into more in just a second. But as you can see, for the most part, it has a lot of A scores. But when I agree with all these A scores, yes and no, depending on which one they are. So let's not waste any more time and dive in. So according to them, the population in Oakville is about 212,000. I think it's a bit above that now, but I imagine this website hasn't been updated for a little bit of time. Median age is 41.2 years. I'd imagine that's about accurate as well. Some of the overall stats that it's got here is that the Oakville crime rates are 40% lower than the Ontario average, which is definitely a plus of living in Oakville, as well as the cost of living is only 3% higher than the Ontario average. This is something I'm going to disagree with, because if you include the cost of living, one of the bigger parts, especially for Oakville, is going to be the housing cost is going to be on the very high side compared to the rest of Ontario. And as a result, I imagine it's much higher than 3%. So if they're just taking out the housing costs, okay, maybe so. But even then, that's a huge part of living, it is the housing. So let's dive in and look at the amenities. All right, so they have a D plus for the amenities, basically the worst score in all of Oakville here. Now, first thing we'll start with is the parks. Now, very similar. I don't know why they do this, and they've done this with Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, every single time on this website here. They list the smallest parks and not even the best parks to mention. Like, I personally would give the parks in Oakville like a B, B plus. They're nice because you have the waterfront parks, and that's where you got to go to the B plus. But like, if you're compared to like Burlington's waterfront parks, I think Burlington's waterfront parks are better. Hamilton has a lot more parks and a lot more diversity with the waterfalls, so that's why I don't think it's as good as those. With that said, you're going to find a lot of ravines within Oakville because of the typography. So one, you're still going to find lots of great nature trails to walk in a variety of neighborhoods, like the Lions Valley Park, for example, or 16 Mile Creek to walk around. But with that said, it's not going to have huge parks to choose from. The biggest one would be between Burlington and Oakville in Bronte Creek Provincial Park is probably your best one. And then you are going to have a couple of waterfront parks to enjoy, from the Burloak Waterfront Park that is between Burlington and Oakville, to the Bronte Waterfront Harbor Park, to Tannery and Lakeside Park, as well as a few other great waterfront parks to choose from. And then in terms of like just community centers that have lots of parks associated with, first and foremost, you're going to find amazing schools in Oakville. And beside all one of those schools there, they're all going to be within walking distance pretty much to all the houses in Oakville. You're going to have some schools to walk to for the most part. And as a result, you're going to find typical neighborhood parks that probably have a jungle gym, maybe have a splash pad, definitely have a soccer field, maybe have a basketball court, maybe have a baseball field as well to choose from. You're going to find some good neighborhood parks, like the Nayagawa Park is right beside the Lions Valley Park. It's not the biggest one, but does offer a great jungle gym and splash pad to enjoy. Then let's move on over to the entertainment. Now, for the entertainment in Oakville, I'd probably give this like a C plus, B. This is probably, in my opinion, the weak part of Oakville's thing. Now, as you see here, you have a few different things that you can go and enjoy. First and foremost would be like the different community centers to enjoy. There's a few great ones, few great arenas, few great indoor pools that you can enjoy as well. In terms of nightlife, not going to be much there in Oakville to enjoy. You're going to find a couple of bars to enjoy, which we'll just discuss in just a second. However, in my opinion, probably the most notable like nightlife, and I wouldn't even call it nightlife, but just like nighttime activity you can do in Oakville is the 5 Drive-In Movie Theater, which is a drive-in movie theater right on 8th line for you to enjoy. Then other than that, you're going to find, they have like the Oakville Museum here to learn a bit about the history of Oakville. Once you do it once, you're not really going to want to do it a bunch of times, so I wouldn't say that's a great one. But I would say as well, like, Oakville has a great sense of community with a lot of different events and festivals that happen year-round. If you want to learn where those are and what are the best events and festivals and things to do, keep on watching. I'll share where you can find all of that in just a moment. And then we move to food and drink, probably my biggest bone to pick with area vibes, because I promise you, there is better things to eat in Oakville than Subway, Quiznos, Pizza Nova, Dairy Queen, Firehouse stuff. Like, I don't know why they don't shout out local things. A couple of my favorites that I've recently been enjoying recently is the Greek Tavern in downtown Oakville. You have Moe's Cafe, or Moe's Diner, excuse me, which is a fantastic family spot. I used to go all the time. But then we also have like Fire Hall in Bronte, the Plank Resto Bar as well, Pure and Simple. Like, there's a lot of great restaurants to choose from. Spoon and Fork is another one that comes to mind. However, with that said, it's on par with Burlington as what I would say. If you compare it to Mississauga, it's not even going to come comparison. And then same with Hamilton, it's not coming in comparison. So, this is probably the weak point of the 3 between parks, entertainment, and food and drinks is this one here. I'd probably give this like a C+, B- for Oakville. Still can find a lot of great restaurants, but not compared to the other cities as much. And then we move on to the commute time. This is an A+. Public transit, apparently 39% of people drive to work. I imagine the number is actually a bit higher, 2% lower than the Canadian average. I imagine it's actually above the Canadian average, just simply put. Well, maybe not. We'll see, because people can work from home. But typically speaking, Oakville is a commuter town. You're either working remote, working hybrid, or you're commuting on a regular basis into the rest of the GTA. You will find some employment options in Oakville. But what I find when I'm helping clients move here, typically speaking, they're going to be at least working from a headquarters at somewhere else in the GTA, like Toronto or Mississauga. The commute can definitely be bottlenecked up. You have 2 main GO train stations in Oakville GO and Bronte GO that do offer you some good GO train options in there. However, with that said, you're going to be noticing still the biggest bottleneck is going to be really between the QEW and 403 merge right around the Ford plant. 9% of people take public transit. This is actually surprising. From at least the people I talk with, it's less likely that they take public transit if you live in Oakville, from what I've heard. So it's interesting to see that they think it's 1% higher than the Canadian average. And then walk to work is 2%, 1% lower than the Canadian average. You basically have to be living right beside your work in order to walk to work in Oakville. It's not as easily walkable as if you were living in Toronto or like downtown Mississauga for that part there. And then we move on to the cost of living. And this is why it's kind of confusing. I would personally agree, like in terms of if you include the real estate cost with the cost of living in Oakville, this is the biggest negative. There's not much else really negative to say about Oakville, but this is it. It's the real estate cost. It's heads and shoulders above everything else you're going to be finding compared to like a sister city I would refer to as Burlington. That's very common in a lot of aspects. However, the cost of real estate, especially detached homes, freehold townhomes in Oakville, are going to be much higher. So it's interesting to see it's only 3% higher than the Ontario average, but maybe this is just like the groceries, because it's 14% higher than average, 11% higher than the Ontario average, and it's 100% the national index. Very interesting. So yeah, I would agree with that being an F. Whoopsies. Then we move on to the crime rate. This being an A+, meaning it's one fantastic spot to raise a family because of the safety is so good. So, of course, I'll give my quick opinion here, but really it's just based on the stats, and that is Oakville is a part of Halton. Halton has been rated one of the safest regions, actually, the safest region for like 23, I think, years in a row for over 100,000 people for both violent crime and non-violent crime. So if that doesn't deem an A+, I don't know what else wouldn't. It's 56% lower here apparently compared to the Canadian national average. Makes perfect sense considering it's the safest community with more than 100,000 people. Chances of being a victim, 1 in 55. Okay, yeah, maybe so. I'm not too sure about that number there. And year-over-year crime hasn't increased. Based on the perception and the conversations I'm having about Oakville, year-over-year crime probably has increased a little. According to these stats, it hasn't. So, of course, at the end of the day, always do your own due diligence when it comes to the crime. I'll leave a link down below to the Halton crime map. That will give you the best, most updated resources when it comes to the crime and what exactly is happening straight from the police's mouth. However, with that said, at least the news articles make it seem like car theft seems to be on the rise within the GTA. And since Oakville is a part of the GTA, I would imagine that Oakville probably hasn't been left unscathed either. Now, with that said, still would rate it an A+. Now we move on to the employment. The median household income is $137,000, which is 66% higher than the Canadian national average. And honestly, this makes sense to me because the real estate costs are so high here. In order to purchase a home here, you need to be on that higher tier side in order to buy a home, or even for that matter, if you're looking to rent, like rent is still going to be at a premium living in Oakville. 64% of people in the labor force. Interesting to see, it's actually not above the Canadian average. That's something I would have guessed. But they say here it's right along the Canadian average. And then unemployment rates, 4%. Again, Oakville is very expensive to live. You don't notice really much of a homeless issue in Oakville. You'll notice a couple maybe when you're popping off the highway, but for the most part, nothing compared to what you would see in Toronto, Mississauga, Burlington for that matter. So overall, I would personally give Oakville an A, only because like I know a lot of my clients are commuting outside of Oakville for their work. So while they're still employed, still have high household income, still in the labor force, still low unemployment rate, I would say the job opportunities in Oakville compared to like Mississauga, Toronto are less, and that's why I would slightly deem that down to an A. Then we move on to the health and safety. Now, as you see here, it's rated an A+. I would have to agree. Like the Oakville Trafalgar Hospital is the newest hospital on the west side of the GTA that I'm aware of. So one, it's got great facilities, it's got great doctors. I've been there multiple times when I've been sick. My girlfriend's been sick. This is the hospital who we tend to go to. We just enjoy the experience every single time, even if it's a little bit more of a drive out. At times, we find ourselves going here. So would have to say absolutely an A+ from personal experience. I would say though, one downside, and I mean this is not just in Oakville, this is across kind of Canada and Ontario as a whole, as I'm sure you're living. If you live in Ontario, you probably know the wait times would be kind of the downfall in that sense there. But with that said, it's free healthcare and it's a fantastic healthcare system. So really very little complaints on my end here. I would go maybe an A because of that, but again, fantastic. In terms of pharmacy, in terms of doctors, yep, we can find a lot of different pharmacies to enjoy, and doctors, you're going to find a lot of specialty doctors within Oakville. So if you get referred out from the Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital, you're going to be finding usually in Oakville, you know what I mean, if you need an MRI scan, a lung doctor, I don't know, whatever, ear, nose, and throat doctor, etc., you're going to find a variety of specialists right within Oakville to capitalize on. So would have to give that an A+. And then we move on to the housing. This is, like I mentioned, it's an A+ here, which is quite interesting to say because I guess it depends on what's your budget you're looking to spend and what do you value. In terms of the quality of real estate in Oakville, if you take out costs from it, detached homes are great, townhomes are great, and condos are going to be great options to choose from. The build quality is great here. For the most part, you're going to find really homes built after the 80s. You'll find some older deep bungalows, but usually those are also going to be really supported up by those custom infill projects in the area, raising their floor and allowing you to sell more money there. So in terms of like an investment standpoint, even if we look like during the recent years when it was dipping in real estate across the GTA, in terms of detached homes from the peak in 2022 to 2024, we saw a dip in a lot of different cities. Oakville was not one. It stagnated, so it didn't increase, but compared to some other cities like the GTA, it really maintained it. So in terms of investment prowess, it's also a great way to do it. Now, in terms of like if you're talking about investments and you're going to rent it out, because the purchase prices are so high, I wouldn't recommend it for an investment, but if you have the budget to afford it for a family home in Oakville, would not recommend it more. The median rent price here, they don't mention it. It's going to be higher than almost every other area you're looking, other than maybe downtown Toronto for an equivalent type of property. And that's just because of all the other positives that happen in Oakville. And as you can see, 81% of people in Oakville are home ownership. I imagine that number is probably not that high because some people rent out and don't necessarily report it. With that said, 20% above the Canadian average. I imagine no matter what the number is, you're going to be seeing that be above the Canadian average there. So yeah, if you take out costs, A+. If you add costs in, I mean, I would say a B, just because if you have the budget, it works. If you don't have the budget, then that's really the negative thing about Oakville's real estate. And then we move on to the Oakville Schools. So Oakville Schools was rated an A+, and I mean, this is, I would agree, and that's not based on my opinion, that's based on the Fraser Institute rankings. I've looked at all of them constantly over the years at helping clients relocate here. And that if you don't know, the Fraser Institute, you can look it up online. I'll leave a link down below as well. puts all the schools into an index based on the Ontario provincial test from grade 3, 6, and 9, and then rates it on a score of 10. Anything above a 6 is considered above provincial average. Pretty much every elementary school and every high school in Oakville is above the provincial average, with a lot of them ranking in the top, really like 100 and 500 schools, as well as a variety of different private schools. And you also have Sheridan College. The only thing that Oakville's really lacking in terms of schools, it doesn't have a university. But then again, you're just a short drive to like McMaster University in Hamilton, as well as like University of Toronto, Ryerson University out in Toronto also to enjoy. And as you see here, the bachelor's degree is 43%, which is 73% higher than the Canadian average. School test scores are higher just because, again, of the environment your kids will be living in. This tends to be why they rate so well, I believe. Then we have the user rating, A+, A. Got actually 17 reviews. The most reviews I've seen from a user rating. Again, I don't necessarily know where they got these people from, but nice to see that's an A score. So those were the overall livability. As you see here, there are some areas that they're rating more livable than less. So if we flip on and we go to Area Vibes website for the best neighborhoods in Oakville for families. Now, we have a couple. All right, so let's look at them. First is Joshua Creek and Wedgwood Creek. So those two are basically together. Actually, we'll even include Iroquois Ridge North. So they are all in this kind of north eastern corner of Oakville. Now, a couple of things. Overall, I like these neighborhoods, especially Joshua Creek. You're gonna find some beautiful detached homes, some great schooling options to choose from. So immediately, like if Wedgwood Creek's getting an A+, I think the amenities for Joshua Creek as well as Iroquois Shore should all be the same, because you're basically within driving distance of all the same. Education across the board should all be A+ as well. Housing should be A+ minus the cost of housing, like we've already discussed. One thing to note is currently on social media, so I'd always recommend doing extra due diligence as well, is this area right here that looks like a beautiful green space, and it is today, was an old landfill. Some people have, in the Oakville population, the residents there have made a stir. The Oakville, town of Oakville really says that it's all good. Always just recommend doing your due diligence, and that's why I'm mentioning it here, because they say, they're testing the ground, it's all good. Other people think otherwise. So would do your due diligence is one of the reasons why I might knock Joshua Creek down a bit. With that said, like me personally, I would have no problem living in this neighborhood at all. So fine with those being 1, 2, and 3. Then 4, we have River Oaks. Interesting to me, this is a more established neighborhood than like the West Oak Trails right here, as well as Westmount right here. But I'd really put them as the similar. Myself and what my clients are finding is they actually prefer these neighborhoods a bit more than the River Oaks, just because slightly newer real estate, basically the same time period, maybe 10 years newer. But they tend to like those areas for whatever reason over in this area here. Nonetheless, whether you're buying in the River Oaks, Westmount, West Oak Trails, it's going to be fantastic neighborhoods to choose from as well. Lots of shopping options. I think this is one of the things that benefits 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the huge amount of shopping options that you're going to be finding along Trafalgar and Dundas. Now, if you want to learn more about where the other landfills are, the wastewater treatment centers, the train tracks, the old oil refinery, and so much more about Oakville's map, leave a link at the end of this video here sharing where you can find that whole video where I break down literally everything you need to know. Then in 5th place, we have Clearview. Now, interestingly, like when I'm rating like best places to live in Oakville, I typically don't include this list here. The reason why is, one, it's really like when you're living in this area, you're more in Mississauga than you are in Oakville. So you're going to be accessing just more of Mississauga than you would of Oakville. With that said, because it is in Oakville, fair enough that it's rated a 5. I think there's a few neighborhoods that are a bit better, but it always depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to commute into Toronto, this is going to be better than a lot of other neighborhoods. So again, goes where you get it, but I understand why it's rated 5th. And then 6, we've already talked about the West Oak Trails and Westmount neighborhood. The next one just south of those, which is the biggest neighborhood in Oakville, is Glen Abbey. This is another great neighborhood in terms of just if you're looking for overall experience from great nature, fantastic golf courses with the Glen Abbey Golf Course where they hold the Canadian Open every year, fantastic schools, etc. So if you look at Glen Abbey, like amenities, B+. Yep, I could see that, because kind of when you get into the middle of Oakville, a little bit less shopping options, less local gems compared to South Oakville, and then near Dundas is where you're going to find the major shopping. With that said, I think B+ is quite fair, because in the long upper middle, which is what Glen Abbey borders, even that for that matter, along the 403, you're going to have some good shopping options. In particular, would be like the Oakville Place Mall, for example. Then in ninth place, which is very interesting, but I kind of see their viewpoint is Morrison. So this is the most expensive area to purchase real estate in all of Oakville. So that is right over here. It says in Sinclair Park in Google. It's this area right here. It's where you're going to find, again, the most expensive, the beautifulest homes, the most private lots in all of Oakville, other than the ones that are right on Lake Ontario. However, with that said, it's primarily a residential neighborhood. You're not going to have as many neighborhood parks as you would find in Westmount, Glen Abbey, West Oak Trails, pretty much all the other neighborhoods we've discussed so far. However, you have a huge backyard if you're living there, most likely, and you can enjoy the green spaces through that, and has great schools, as you can see. And then the final one, rounding out the top 10 neighborhoods in Oakville to enjoy, is Glen Auchray. So Glen Auchray is one of the newer neighborhoods in Oakville, just north of Dundas right here. So if you're looking for like new detached homes, this is going to be the most amount of options to choose from. So lots of great options, lots of great schooling. And like I mentioned, because it's kind of sitting on the Dundas Road right here, you're going to have lots of shopping options to choose from. So if you want more detailed breakdown on the neighborhoods that work for you and your search criteria and what you value in a neighborhood, send me and my team a message today if you're thinking about relocating, whether you're 60 days out or 6 months out. But if you want to learn more about Oakville's map, its pros and cons, and everything you need to know about living in Oakville, the next video I'd recommend you go take a look at is my video covering all the pros and cons of living in Oakville. So you can find that video right here. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.